Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a very elaborate and extensive discussion. And to carry this further, from the fireside chat, I'm now moving over to a fiery panel. I have with us Mr. L V Navaneeth, who is the CEO at the Hindu Group, Mr. Ali Hussein, who's CEO at Eros now, Mr. Zubin Dubash, who's the CEO of the digital network at Shemaroo, and of course, Shweta Jain is joining me again. She is the Head of Business and Development, APAC Region Media and Entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, you all heard the conversation. Now, I'll first go to Ali. Ali, हर कोई digital के बारे में बात करते हैं, and everybody seems that they have cracked the code, they have cracked the monetization angle, and the very next moment we are back to square one. यार ये नहीं चल रहा है, थोड़ी देर का phase था, now it's gone. Now we need to think of something else. How has your monetization strategy fared so far? How has Eros dealt with monetization so far?
So, you're throwing me into the fire first, right? So I'm taking the bullet straight to the head. So I think we need to take a step back, right? I think we jumped straight into monetization, but I think one of the larger challenges I personally feel with this business is that we end up putting a lot of pressure on the OTT business. You got to remember that this business is maybe 2-3 years old. So I still believe it's at its early stage of nascency, right? So when you look at whether it's subscription model, short form content, long form content, different kind of monetization model, and the disruption is happening at a much faster pace as compared to what you saw in the cinema business or what you saw in the typical satellite television business, right? So I think to take a step back, I think there needs to be maturity both in an adoption cycle from a customer standpoint till you reach certain amount of critical mass, right? And I can give you a small example, right? Till this time, we believed that the world was going to be, or the world is, especially in India, was a very kind of handheld devices-led kind of strategy where 90-95% consumption was coming from the mobile devices. But if you actually look at the statistics specifically, and so is also true if Shweta can kind of ratify from Prime Video and what they're doing, a lot of consumption on some of the newer originals, newer kind of movies that are released on digital is actually coming from the larger screen. But the larger screens are now becoming a larger share of voice of the consumption platform. Right? So I think there needs to be enough maturity and stabilization of the business, both from a consumer perspective, because we're still in the midst of handheld viewing, large screen viewing, and then in the midst of kind of what the monetization cycles will be in terms of appropriate monetization cycles. So I think the answer to your question is that we're still at early stages in terms of consumer adoption.
Correct.
But coming to your question on monetization, I think we look at Eros now specifically since its birth in 2012 has kind of stuck to their guns on being a subscription-driven product, right? Our kind of larger philosophy behind what we were doing is, premium entertainment for the masses. The kind of softer aspects of that is looking at how do you look at movies like Bajirao Mastani, Tanu Ved Manu, high quality premium entertainment content, which was available at an affordable price. We launched these products and services at a time when piracy was still rampant. A lot of kind of sharing of content between family and individuals was quite rampant. So optimum monetization was still some distance to go. I think whilst the country has seen, I wouldn't say optimization of the advertiser format, but I think the scale of the advertiser format. The effective RPMs are still on the lower side. I think there is, specifically in the last 18 months or so, a certain amount of maturity that is creeping in both on the subscription side of the business and the advertising side of the business. But again, mind you, this is all early days. So I think in a general sense, because we stayed true to subscription, our business model was slightly more measurable, but obviously at a slower pickup cycle than we would have otherwise liked. And obviously will pick up a certain steam over a period of time. When you start looking at the trend, right, what you're going to see is, unfortunately, there is no significant rocket science around the traditional business model. We will kind of mirror a kind of TV strategy where your subscription cost would be, I would say, subsidized by a certain percentage, and you start looking at the balance monetization from an ad dollar standpoint. And that becomes more relevant where your consumption skews greater than 50-60% on the large screen. So you're actually getting in-home, in-living room family entertainment rather than just pure play handheld entertainment. So I'll pause there. Otherwise, I can continue for the next 15 minutes.
Sure. Now, that's a good way to, start this panel. And I'm expecting a lot other, angles coming in. Navneeth, I'll come to you. Okay, I share our misery of being a news player, but I'll ask you first. How has I'll ask you the same question, and of course, then we'll move on to the other parts. How has monetization fared for you? Because that is the biggest standard question for everybody, and like Ali also highlighted.
Thanks, Abhinav. Fellow traveler, but I'm not in misery. I'm in a happy place. I think it's been good. We have been on this journey for. We started a few years ago, putting our e-paper behind the subscription journey, and now all our digital products. The last 1.5 2 years, we are fairly serious about it and fairly committed. We are seeing good traction. We still have a mix of advertising and subscription revenues. Subscription, of course, started on a lower basis and is growing exponentially. But today we are at a place where subscription contributes to little under 50% of our digital revenues.
Okay.
Good place to be in, but miles to go. But I believe we are on the right.
Sure. Zubin, how about you?
So if I had to just take a step back and just give a perspective around what's happening in the monetization space on the OTT side of things. So today we are about 50 OTTs in the market, and this is not going to stop. We're going to see many more OTTs coming out. It will probably be akin to channels on TV at some point in time. So as of right now, 50 OTTs, and the interesting number there is that there are 13 OTTs in the last 1 year which have come out, and they are all regional OTT plays. That gives you a sense of where the directional, appetite for OTT consumption is. Of course, the Hindi belt and the cream HSM belt has been anyways, it's fiercely competitive right now with everyone kind of participating in it. All the top 10 in a way are participating in it. In terms of revenues, if I had to see, we were approximately a $1.4 billion revenue market in terms of overall revenue in terms of subscriptions this year, and probably by 2026 we'll probably be at about 2 billion as the projections look outlook is, as such.
Okay.
Now the way we look at the entire monetization piece is that there are 3 ways in which people end up paying you, but before that you need to look at the cost aspects. So when you look at the cost of running an OTT business, I think at a very high level, there are 3 C's, as I call them: the content, customer acquisition, and your CDN guys. I mean, Shweta's on the panel, so she'll know what I'm talking of. So the content costs are, I would say they are deeper investment, and they continue with every month. You end up spending more and more on content, and that's the investment you have to make in staying alive in that whole OTT business. Once you have great content, you need to go and talk to your customers and bring them on board and outshout everyone else in terms of your content being better than anything else, or the content of the hour or content of the day. And of course, CDN is when the content and the consumer are happy and consumed, the CDN is getting nicely juiced out. So that's, of course, your cost that you have to maintain. Now, these are your 3 fundamental costs of running a business, apart from all the HR and all the rest of the stuff that goes into it: the people cost, the tech cost, the platform cost, the other stuff that goes into it. Who pays for all of this? There are 3 entities as such. One is, of course, the advertiser. The second is, of course, the customer. And the third is, of course, the partnerships that emerge from people who see value in your content that they can offer to their customers. So these are the 3 entities who end up paying. Now, at the end of it all, of course, as Ali rightly mentioned, we are at a very nascent stage, so no one's going to look at numbers for the next 5 years in terms of saying profitability for the next 5 years. But if this has to become like a very rollicking TV business and the TV industry, we will need to look at some sort of checks and balances to kind of equate this whole thing in the long run. Let me talk a little bit about what we've done in the last couple of years since we launched. So we took a very clear B2B strategy initially in the last 2 years. And in those 2 years, we actually built partnerships with almost 60 to 70 different entities across various sectors. And our only promise to them was that we know content and we'll bring in content as a solution to achieve your objectives as a business. Now, whether it's the IT sector, whether it's the e-com sector, whether it's the ISP sector, whether it's the FMCG sector, all we did was you tell us your objectives and we'll come back to you with some sort of a solution using content as a catalyst. And we did lots of partnerships in that area, which of course have become line items in my top line for B2B revenue. And that's the one that's actually generating the real revenue for us as of right now. Having said that, we also moved.
You're saying content as a solution offering is the most viable.
Yeah. Okay. As of right now, it's a very, I would say it's a lucrative offering. It's profitable, and you definitely can make a lot of innovations in that. We've done quite a few innovations. We are on the verge of rolling out a few more as well as we speak. But the idea there is that if you become some sort of a reason to achieve someone else's objectives, another business's objectives using content as a catalyst, then that's when you're in business, and that's when people will actually eat out of your hands. And that's what we've seen happening, Recently, Abhinav, we've also gotten to, recently means about 6 months now, we've gotten very aggressively into the B2C OTT game as well. And having studied the entire market, we of course took one part. It's the first step in the entire B2C space, which is let's go the regional way, because we saw the regional numbers like I mentioned initially. Regional, of course, has been a very clear play, and we picked up certain areas that we wanted to, where we saw there's a need and where we saw we have the capability to win in that market. And Gujarati is one of those. We've come out with a slew of Gujarati offerings, right from web series to movie blockbusters, as well as to plays and nataks. So all of that is what we are offering right now. And we've seen some, fingers crossed, we've seen some blistering growth on that number, on that track. Because there's been an untapped market. It has been hungry for content in their own language. They feel the pride of speaking and talking in Gujarati and even exchanging notes in Gujarati. So
I am on that page. If I am on the page where you have Gujarati offerings, all your Gujarati offerings are right now on the display.
Awesome. So that's exactly what the entire thing is. And we've been looking at, again, there we look at different kinds of monetization.
Sure.
Customers come in on subscription. We also look at, we do gift vouchers of Shemaroo for that community. And that's the kind of thing that we kind of drive home across the board. Another thing that we've also recently started and has been very lucrative for us is we do a lot of outcalling to our customers and to customers who probably miss out on subscribing and stuff like that. So we actually have a call center which does outbound calling, and we've seen some very good traction going around that as well. So that's another way of, garnering customers, bringing them back on board. That's about it. I think I can go on, but I'll stop.
Sure. Now, Shweta, I'll bring you in before I move on, because the other three are content players. You are one of the technology enablers. How has been your experience with your clients as far as usage of technology and monetization in this Asia Pacific region is concerned? I'll give you the mic, and then of course we move on to the next part.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you to all the panelists for agreeing to come on this, and really appreciate and looking forward to an interesting conversation. It has already, I've been making notes as you folks have been speaking, and lots of great insights there. And yeah, like, Abhinav, you mentioned, I have the privilege of working with a lot of customers, like the three of them. And we are seeing a lot of variations in the models, the revenue models that OTT platforms are evaluating and adopting and experimenting with. And the good thing is that cloud is actually helping do a lot of these experiments at either zero or practically like very, very low cost as well, right? So I will talk about three trends, which are technology-related trends, right? Technology-triggered monetization trends that I'm seeing among our APAC customers, right? So first is the use of AI and machine learning, right? So to give you an example, like one of our news media customers who follows a freemium model, where only part of the content catalog is available free, and for rest they have to pay, and they have to basically choose and decide which content should be made available for free and which they should charge for. So they developed a custom AI model on AWS to predict the number of incremental subscriptions that a news story can potentially drive, right? And that helps them to decide whether a certain news article should go behind a paywall or not, right? So this is an interesting way of using AI. Right? There are many use cases, but I've picked up 3 things, right? So first is this use of AI. Second is also, I think I briefly talked about it during your chat with Neeraj also, that how more and more video platforms are now implementing server-side ads versus the client-side ads. Right. And I also talked about, how client-side ads are pretty easy to block today. There are so many ad blocking software and tools that are available today freely. Right. And also client-side ads are also prone to malware that can insert competing ads. So the switch to server-side ads is really happening in a big way. And it also ensures a seamless viewing experience because the ads are stitched as part of the content and is rendered in the same resolution. Like I try to imagine that if you're watching an HD feed of a live football match and all of a sudden you see an advertisement that's in lower resolution, it just, it's very disrupting in terms of the user experience. So yeah, more and more customers are switching to server-side ads. And the third trend that I see a lot coming up in the discussion, especially on monetization, is the entire FAST segment. So FAST stands for free ad-supported television, which is, really becoming a big trend because the sales and popularity of connected televisions is going up, and it's opening up more monetization opportunities for content owners, including a lot of regional content owners or niche content owners, because they can now replace the ads in real time on these platforms, right? So there I have an example of a partner of AWS called Amagi. They have actually built a dynamic ad insertion solution called Thunderstorm, which uses machine learning to detect the advertisements in the video and then replace them with geo-targeted or contextual ads, right? So it's a big and growing segment that's believed to be roughly $50 billion globally. So yeah, that's the technology, I would say, point of view.
Sure. Navaneeth, I'll come to you. Throughout these discussions, not only with Neeraj, but we have had very offline discussions, like some here, some there. News as a category, has been constantly linked with the live audience. News has the most scope of going live as compared to entertainment OTTs or entertainment offerings. When it comes to engagement and vying for attention of our users, and in our case, Navaneeth, especially in the news domain, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a point of view, which is different in case of entertainment. Not everybody claims to be a Christopher Nolan when maybe Ali or Zubin might premiere a film. But everybody in the category of news claims that they know best. Unko civics sabse zyada aati hai, unko politics sabse zyada aati hai, unko economics sabse zyada aati hai. The fact of the matter is, are the news players of lately, they have been thrashed top, right and center. Do we suffer from a credibility issue? That's one, which, bars users to sign up for content, to pay for the content, when a lot of news and of lately other offerings are available for free. That's one. Second, when it comes to blue ocean strategy of the news, do you think we need to start looking at offerings beyond just content? New modules of engaging our users, because in our case, everybody has an opinion. So do we need to look at engagement models beyond just one-sided flow of content?
That's a lovely question and true in our lives. But I think, Abhinav, this is as true for everybody else as for news. Look at movies. There's a bunch of people working with talent and take 2-3 years to produce a movie and a viewer.
No, Navaneeth, you cannot behave like a new CEO. When you are asked a question, you should answer it like a new CEO. आप movies वालों पे बंदूक मत रखिए.
So I don't think it's unique to us. It's true of every industry, except we hear them more often than others.
Okay.
And I love opinionated users. So it's always good to have people love you, hate you, because you can't build a business around indifferent audiences.
Sure.
People who love you will pay for you, and if you listen to people who don't really like you, irrespective of what their perceived expertise is, it's a good thing. In terms of engagement, you're right. We need to move and engage with our audiences on platforms beyond our own platforms where our news assets are housed. That I think is a big opportunity. And if we engage well with them, they will be willing to pay. The last question I think you asked is how do we move away? How do we?
Is there something more beyond content? The credibility issue. How will users pay for the content they want to watch, especially in information age?
See, I think people will pay for content, including in India, if they see value in the content. It's not a question of whether people are willing to pay. And if you look at the OTT journey, which is 2-3 years old journey, the numbers are extremely encouraging. People will pay for news if they see value in what we offer. So long as there's a compelling value and you're priced right. I don't think users are averse to paying. And of course, you're operating in an ecosystem where lots of news that is hygiene in nature is freely available. So if you're able to create enough differentiation around your views and not necessarily news, and of course, you should get the news right, you should have credibility, you should have trust. So my belief is players have been for a long amount of time who enjoy that trust and credibility are at an advantage. And the one thing players with legacy can do well is to use the power of their archival content, and this did figure in an earlier discussion. And to my mind, what is archival content? See, today there's an overload of information. We have far more dipstick expertise in multiple topics than deep expertise in many topics. Archives allows us to make sense of what's happening using the context of what happened yesterday. To that extent, I believe that while our future is what we make it out to be, a lot of our future also lies in our past, and that's a huge opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, well, that calls for a separate discussion, Navaneeth, because do you think long format content attracts more viewers in news? Because, we have got John Oliver and stand-up comedians serving news better as far as the mainstream journalists are concerned, and we have faced these issues in the past. But you have a valid point when you say that eventually this will be a flooded market, and eventually users would want to pay for some. It's a combination of archival and the present content. Ali, I'll come to you, and then of course Zubin. When it comes to OTTs, we have more than 60 players now in 2021. We started with 15 in 2015. We have more than 60 players now. Now, my question to you is, where are we headed? We have billions being poured on original content. Everybody's coming up with their original content. We are going regional. Plus, there is, Zubin mentioned 3 C's. I would like to add one more C. It's called Chori. There's an issue of piracy. Whatever content is available on OTTs, they have pirated versions. There are hundreds of email websites. I can name 5 right now where you can download the content. Where are we as an industry headed as far as, future monetization is concerned? How do we deal with these hurdles and challenges going forward?
So, what's the question? Where are we headed as a trend and as a larger business? I can answer that. Then there's a question in terms of the evolution of monetization. That's a different answer.
Both are related. Okay. That's why I asked them.
Both are related. Okay. No, so I think one is at an industry level. I think Zubin kind of touched upon it. You're going to see a lot more launches, right? There's a lot more. I don't know, a lot of the people in the audience know this, but historically, like Hollywood is kind of playing catch up to India in that context. Or I don't want to say Hollywood is playing catch up to Bollywood. That's a little bit of a cliche, but Paramount, CBS, Disney were much later launches. Some of the incumbent broadcasters in India were actually off the gates earlier. Hotstar existed in its kind of native form in 2015, 16. kind of been developing the business, and some of the US players have just kind of recently launched, including some of the kind of major deals that have kind of happened, especially in 2020, 2021. Right? There was a reverse kind of merger integration between Discovery and Warner Media. So some of these things are still unfolding in terms of how the global landscape kind of plays out. So I think, again, going back to that same answer I gave you, which was in terms of an adoption, what you're going to see is, we had, I think, if I remember correctly, 800 TV channels or at some point in terms of overall unique brands that existed in some form or the other, right? I think very similarly, I don't think there'll be 800 OTT platforms. I hope that's not the case, but there's definitely going to be a proliferation of OTT networks, niche networks. You're seeing language networks being born. You're going to see genre networks being born. You're going to see some of the so-called YouTube influencers or TikTok influencers launching their own OTT platform, and that proliferation is going to happen. So that niche is going to start thinning down towards the bottom end of the tail, right? So I think that's one piece that's going to happen with the entire barrage of international players looking at what their India or South Asia kind of OTT strategies. So it's going to be a little bit of that cluster mix that's going to happen over the next 2-3 years, right? In terms of monetization, I think I would say 3 kind of important trends, or I would say 4 important trends if I think about it in that fashion. One is that you got to think about it that at the television side, again, I'm using that as a benchmark, right? We're at an average of about $4 or $5, $4, closer to $4 ARPU on a 220 million home kind of base, right? That's 220 to 240 million base, right? Eventually that ARPU moves up in the range of anywhere around $6 to $7, right? So there is going to be a little bit of price elasticity that will kick in on the ARPU side. On a certain aspect, a lot of the OTT are going to capture into that market share. So what I'm trying to say is, whilst you see Netflix selling a la carte or Prime Video having a network kind of play as far as Amazon as a Prime service is concerned, a lot of the other incumbents will be sold a la carte, but will also be bundled.
Okay.
You're already seeing kind of Geo rollout a bundled service as far as a lot of the Geo packs are concerned. We've in fact launched a very fantastic pack with Airtel just a couple of days ago, including launching a film which is Hathi Mere Saathi with Rana Dugupati on that Airtel pack. So you're going to see a lot of these kind of packs, bundled packs get launched, and they'll get launched both at the ISP level as well as the telco level. So that bundled offering means a subsidized cost to the customer. So that's one area where we believe a significant surge in terms of monetization is going to happen. The second area is you're going to see maturity in terms of advertisers, right? But Shweta mentioned that there is capability of tech. There needs to be a maturity of the ecosystem, right? Just because you have users, that doesn't mean that your users are palatable to the advertising or the agency universe, right? And that's a separate kind of discussion by itself. And so that maturity in terms of what does FMCG brands that are looking at mass market reach adopt OTT or digital as a means to look at probably replacing a lot of TV advertising revenues and or building audiences for the future, right? So what does that mean? I think that maturity makes sense. The third, you're going to see, a lot of native models, right? You're seeing early days of blockchain and NFT. So there are alternate digital standalone models that are going to develop, right? Which is how do you take the same asset class, which is content that exists in its native form, and creating digital avatars or creating a virtual world, right? It's almost like, what do these have the currency value in a digital world by itself? And then the last is that being digital as a platform, we will move very simply said from a 2D to a 3D experience, right? So this is going to get into AR, VR. This is going to get into metaverse or immersive content. I don't know how much you guys have been spending, but there are a lot of investment. There's a word that is used in the West called the hyperscalers, right? I've learned this from a few of my colleagues, right? There's the investment that's kind of happening by the hyperscalers in so-called the immersive world, which you refer to as extended gaming, or if you refer to as the metaverse, right? That is going to be another model which is going to be created where you will lead to consumer transactions, because it's almost like you're buying goods in the real world, but it's happening in the digital world. So I think the pillars of monetization stand on these 4 models. The evolution of the so-called OTT business as it stands today gets into these spaces. Then it's about identifying the right strategy and the right consumer target audience to develop who is it going after, and hence what's the business model.
Sure. Zubin?
You'll have to repeat the 2 questions you want me to answer, because there were
I'll make it simple for you. My simple
answer in between, so you'll have to just...
Sure. I'll make it simple for you. Where do you see the evolution, the blue ocean strategy as far as content is concerned? You mentioned 3 C's. Okay, by the way, I really like the background which you have. It's as colorful. My question is that monetization going forward, will it be as colorful as your wall? Considering the fact that we do not yet have a blue ocean strategy in place. You mentioned 3 C's. I, with all due respect and with my humble knowledge, I added one more. It's called chori. There's a lot of piracy happening of content. And when I go through your library, a lot of your Hindi content is available for free on YouTube, which users can watch. The only specialization which you have is vernacular Gujarati content. My question is that how do you plan to monetize this going forward? And what are the hurdles which you will be facing?
So, of course, the first thing, I'll break that up into 2. One is, of course, the monetization bit. What are the monetization opportunities going forward? Like we said, that the OTT numbers are not going to stop, or at least the TGs are not going to stop. So we're going to have a lot of niches, or probably multiple niches. And in India, if you look at a niche, it's almost as big as many small countries, if you look at it that way from a TG point of view. So there are different kinds of slices and dices that we will be, that will emerge as we go along. Like we saw, there are kid-specific OTTs that had emerged some time back, and still now we've got, of course, Woot Kids, who does a fair bit of work on the kids side of things, and therefore there'll be such kind of TGs that will emerge from a need point of view, or from a affinity groups point of view. There could be OTTs around just communities. It just could be the AOL community having an OTT. It could be the Sadhguru community having an OTT of their own. So there'll be a lot of these need-based communities, affinity groups that will emerge as such. Apart from, of course, it's pretty much like the TV explosion that happened when channels started emerging, and eventually you saw channels like Astha, Sanskar, and those kinds are also coming in. You saw cookery channels also coming in. And I don't say it's going to go that far, but as of right now, the next 5 years is all about regionalization. So it's all about saying, how do I bring in originality into regionalization, or bring in, repurposed content into regionalization. And I think both those have enough appetite to kind of build on and monetize. So that's the first part. I agree with what Ali says, that the next I think stage of monetization is going to come from the B2B to C, as I mentioned earlier, saying the partners paying for the content or paying for your top line, and that comes in with bundling. So I believe that bundling across the board, whether it's through ISPs, telcos, or any entity for that matter, which has subscribers, and they want their subscribers to move from plan A to plan B, which is a higher plan, can bundle in OTT as a very good catalyst to drive this up. And this is something that is already emergent and probably will be more prevalent in times to come.
Prevalent in times to come. Okay. Shweta, all the content. Yeah, Zubin, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, talking about your point on the chori aspect of content, I think the biggest competition to the SWOT business is piracy. And today, if you see any OTT, I won't take names, but even you take the leader, the top 3 OTTs, and any content that goes up there, within a span of half an hour, it'll end up coming onto Telegram and the likes. Okay. Now the question here is that, and here there's a calling for a big shout out to all the telcos and the big, not telcos, the tech, the media tech guys who are into the piracy protection space. If there is some sort of a silver bullet that can be kind of managed to prevent this and to even stem it completely, those are unicorns on day one of just the business plan. So that is for sure. And if there are any such kind of tech companies who actually have such techs, they have, I know Amazon has some sort of a tech hack in terms of holding back certain kinds of thing. Ali was mentioning you've got some stuff on, I think, tech for piracy as well. But I think overall, that is the one big competition or threat to SWOT. If that gets plugged, I think the growth of SWOT revenue can be far more accelerated than what it is being projected even now.
Zubin, in early days, we even had piracies in the earlier days. I mean, there were subclasses, DVDs and cassettes which were available. But, with television or maybe cinema, the mediums were different. The problem with internet is that the users, this is far more democratized. And users consider this medium to be as much as theirs, as much as a big corporate MNC could be. So I think that there's more of a mindset problem we are dealing with rather than, a technical or a paywall problem. But, we can have that discussion on some other panel discussion. Shweta, I'll bring you in. Please pardon me. The weather in Mumbai is extremely bad. It's raining since morning. Shweta, I'll bring you in. Most of the content players, they are going regional, vernacular, more focused, bundle packs to extract more monetization. When it comes to ad placement, how important is timing? And how do you manage timing? How do you ensure that you serve the right customer, the right ad at the right time and do not piss the user off? How do you ensure that? And how do services like AWS help customers in doing that?
Yeah, sure. But before I talk about that, because you were on this topic of piracy and, Zubin mentioned that there are companies now who are building solutions. I wanted to just, provide one perspective there before we talk about targeted advertising. So yes, like you said that, the whole, democratization of the internet and, mindset issue, but it's also a very sophisticated technology issue because really the pirates are becoming smarter day by day, right? So they are so more like every single day, there's another level of sophistication, that's happening in piracy. And therefore, even the solutions have to move at that pace, in fact, faster than them, right? And in fact, I read a report by Digital TV Research, right, that talked about the loss of revenue for OTT players in India market. It's expected to hit $3 billion by next year, right, due to piracy, right? So that's the scale of piracy that's happening. And of course, all three panelists are very well, aware of it, and I'm sure dealing with it on a daily basis. So talking about technology.
Shweta, since you mentioned not only piracy, but also cyber attacks. I mean, the way the world has been progressing and the way there have been recent attacks. I mean, last year alone, there were more than 500 reported cases of cyber attacks on Zomato, on Air India, on Jet. I mean, media companies, most of them do not even report. Most of them go underreported. So I think going forward, players like yours, I mean, there are various challenges which are there, not only in terms of cyber security protection, in terms of data, but also piracy.
Yes, absolutely. So content security and piracy, both of them. And I want to talk about one of our partners, in fact, a company called Cinemedia, who's been doing some amazing work in this space and really developing, that cloud-based, in fact, they're a partner of ours. So they do a lot of development on AWS. So they're using machine learning, they're using analytics and real-time monitoring, and also technologies like watermarking, fingerprinting, as part of their counter piracy solution, so to speak, right? So the fact is that the sheer range of devices that the content consumers are using today, and how seamlessly they expect to move from one device to another, be able to resume the videos, and the expectations are so high. So to meet all those expectations, keeping viewers happy, and at the same time be able to plug those leaks and find those leaks of content and be able to act on them very quickly and block them basically. So there are lots of great partners that AWS has. One of them, another one coming to my mind is Irdeto. They've built this very easy to use digital rights management, DRM management system, policy management solution to securely deliver content across multiple devices for every single user. So that was in piracy and content security. And coming back to your targeted advertising question, right? So the promise of a direct to consumer offering is really, the fact that by getting direct access to the viewer and by understanding the viewer better, the interaction with the viewer, it has to deliver more value, not just for the viewer, but also for all the brands and, the advertisers who are advertising and engaging with the viewer. Right. So, and one of the key performance indicators or the KPIs that we use in the business language for brands when it comes to advertising on digital video platforms is really the increase in the return on investment, right? The ROI that they are able to drive on a digital platform versus a television platform, where it's more like a spray and pray kind of approach, right? That you do mass advertising and you hope that there will be some, conversion, some results from it, right? So, and this ROI can definitely be enhanced using this server-side targeted advertising. And this is not only personalized and user targeted, but can also be contextual or content aware advertising. For example, we have this computer vision AI service called Amazon Recognition that can identify the objects and activity in the video, even the sentiments in the video, right? And based on that, the API, basically the app can request for an ad which is more relevant, like, playing a pasta sauce ad during a cookery show or playing a, sports shoe ad during a football match and things like that. And we've seen a lot of content platforms being able to leverage this use of AI to command better CPM rates, for their targeted ads. One example that I want to quickly give you is how the work that we did with one of the very large broadcasters in India, where they came to us and said that they've got this opportunity to work with Cadbury to pop up a Cadbury milk, kuch meetha ho jaye, sort of lower frame graphic on every happy moment in one of their very popular drama series. Right. So we worked with them and, we could use, in fact, recognition. Of course, it's not 100% reliable. I will not make any such claims. But yes, it can automate a lot of these, effects and I would say targeted advertisement placements, so to speak, at scale, right? Being able to deliver that for millions of viewers is something that only technology can really make possible.
Sure. Navaneeth, I'll come to you. Shweta comes from the technology perspective, but if I ask you, there are two models in front of you, news models in front of you. I'll just give you an example, and please correct me if I'm wrong. On one side, we have New York Times, the Guardians, the Reuters of the world, which have constructed paywalls around their content. Okay, and that's the way they are planning to go ahead. On the other side, I'll take you to the interiors of India. There's a channel called Sach Tak, which operates from Patna. Okay, and the TG is only Bihar audience and a little part of Western UP, Muzaffarnagar, Banaras, vagera, vagera. It's run by a team of 12 people. And if you see their content on YouTube, I won't call it cringe content, but it's like fairy journalism. A combination of yellow journalism, in-the-face mic, and being very loud with their approach. But tell you what, it's a profitable venture. I spoke to the founders last week. It's a profitable venture. They have a team of 12 to 15 journalists, 12 to 15 total, a bunch of few journalists. And that's their modus operandi. They are sitting on a 25% margin year on year. And this channel started in 2017. First, they were a little cringe. Now they have gone into a sort of a citizen journalism initiative. These are the two models in front of you. Which one do you think? Do we need to go hyper-local when it comes to monetization as in news? Or do we need to take that approach of New York Times and the Guardian?
It depends on how you want to build the business, right? So if, whether you want to be an advertiser-funded business or whether you want to build a business around subscriptions, whether you believe you have audiences limited to a geography or whether your ambition is global. Now, within what New York Times does and Guardian does, they have different models. One has a paywall model and one has a contribute model. And India has followed both models. And within the paywall model, some people have metered paywall, some people have sections behind, which is very similar to the OTT model. Different things work for different people. But I'll come to the specific question you asked. I think the skills required to run hyperlocal content, the way the example you gave, and I've seen examples of those in other markets as well. That's very different from the skills required to run the kind of businesses we run. And it's very tempting to say that we will do the best of both. We will be hyper global and we'll be hyper local at the same time. But one has to choose. It's extremely difficult to do both, however tempting it is. I would choose for us, the answer is in a larger global audience. While serving our readers in localities well, not necessarily through a hyper-local approach, but you would do it through engaging with community approach. So while it's tempting to do both, I dare say it's difficult to do both and one has to make a choice.
Okay, let me bring you in between. Let's not go to the two extremes, okay? I'll give you a personal example. We approached a BFSI brand for branded content in one of our mutual fund series. Okay, we're creating a series on mutual funds, an audio-visual series, and we want this particular mutual fund brand to integrate with us. What he asks us is a very fundamental question. Why shouldn't I go to a influencer who will decode mutual funds for you, is also more comedy in nature, but at the same time, you are a serious brand, you are a business journalism brand. How should I balance? Why shouldn't I drift towards the influencers? So our increasing competition is also from emerging these influencers, the YouTube players. There's an increasing competition from them. So do you think brand integration and maybe other aspects of monetization will continue the way they have been continuing over the past few years, especially in terms of news business?
See, I think one of the things that's happened is everything has gotten democratized. And that applies to influence as well. But that's not the only money to be made, and that's not the only use case. Be it a client or be it a subscriber has multiple use cases. And there are use cases which we can solve, problems we can solve better than others can do. And if we focus on that, I think the market is large enough to solve.
Okay. Sure. What I meant, Navaneeth, was influencers like CA Rashna, not influencer. So maybe, this could be a different discussion altogether. Zubin, Ali, I'll come to you. There was an interesting question which came to me just for you. Will it be correct to say that OTT services generally tend to struggle at much higher churn rates than traditional pay TV services? That's one. And what are some of the things you folks are doing to address that? Or does it even need to be addressed in the first place?
No, I think it needs to be addressed. Right? I think one of the challenges that we haven't solved, and I think YouTube also still struggles with this challenge, is discovery, right? Like it's like people in the content business and OTT basically, fictionalize it a little bit. They're not being able to sleep at night because, there is a show that has been launched and it doesn't get the kind of discovery, right? If you actually see, discovery is still being used predominantly, which is print, television, outdoor, and obviously all the digital kind of discovery mechanisms. But how is it that you're actually being able to create native virality? Like the question I asked myself, right? I've spent about 2 decades in the so-called media tech business right now. What is technology about this OTT business, right? It's a very simplistic question that I ask myself, because television was driven, to answer your question, television was driven by day-to-day types. You told somebody, like it was a habit, right? You're sitting in front of the TV at 8:30 in the night or 9 in the night with your family, and you're switching on the 3 or 4 channels that are available. Potentially you want to get experimental in nature. So instead of watching a show, that is, if you control the remote, you might watch a movie. But if your mom's controlling the remote, you end up watching that JC show, right? For about 10, 15 years, that was essentially the decor of most Indian families kind of conducted themselves. So I think discovery is a massive challenge, hence aggregating audiences is a massive challenge, right? Because you might have an inside edge being launched and that might get discovered maybe 2 years and 3 years later. That is an interesting show because the audiences are evolving over a period of time. I think I'm going to kind of move away from the media hat that I wear, because I also wear a significant technology hat, right? And kind of cue in Shweta in terms of the kind of work that we're doing on tech. And this is where actually I believe tech plays a massive role in terms of how do you create a differentiated business, right? And I'll give this to you I can give this to you 3 or 4 examples, but I'll focus on 2. One is, it was not really a strategy or vision, but almost like the need of the hour that allowed us to create something called dynamic subtitles. Right? The Middle East is a massive market for us. Historically, it has been. Now we've got 12,000 movies that we have digital license to. Right? Just imagine creating Arabic subtitles, Bahasa subtitles, Chinese subtitles. We're available across 80 to 100 countries. How do we make sure that we're able to cater to our local audiences? Right? So what we did, in specifically looking at the Middle East as a core kind of geography, we've now mastered the capability to do subtitles dynamically. So you don't have to have humans writing subtitles. You're actually able to write 2 Arabic subtitles completely on the fly. Now, this was also done, and again, we tested this out with whatever was available in the open domain in terms of Google Translate or with the Amazon services, and we realized that our accuracy was way higher because we had, for no other better reason, but just for the fact that our learning data was important. So when that you provide as Arabic metadata also in the region, the discovery of the content that becomes easier. So this is a very simplistic but a fabulous example of how we've taken a use case that came in from our customers, localized content or made content available in a local language using technology, which increased the adoption anywhere between 3x to 4x over a period of 6 months. Right? I'm just giving you a small example. What we're doing now just with this tech is we're actually converting the subtitle into computer-generated voice. So we will be able to do dubbing dynamically, right? So it's not just the subtitle, but we'll also be able to provide the original asset in a dubbed language dynamically. So it will further look at ways of how to look at adoption increase. So hence aggregating audience becomes easier, simpler, and then we're able to cluster this audience better. Another example of tech, and we did this pilot in about 10 cities in Karnataka last year, is we're still kind of a patchy network, right? If you go beyond the top 8-10 kind of English-speaking cities into the heartland of the country, 4G connectivity is still not a common phenomenon in these markets, right? So we created a satellite delivery. So it's cloud to satellite, satellite to customer, right? So we created what we call as a hybrid network, and we piloted this with our kind of strategic partners in tech to be able to deliver across 10 cities in Karnataka on a P2P level, which again, controlling the entire infrastructure again via the cloud itself, right? So these are just examples around which of how it was relatively easier to aggregate an audience in a theater or an aggregate audience on a TV screen because it was kind of appointment viewing. And now in a means of where it is dispersed viewing or kind of sporadic viewing, how we're able to aggregate audience using technology. So I'm saying there are various mechanisms. I'm just giving you a couple of examples. But again, what we're doing today, there is going to be a significant evolution of the future, right? There are 2 or 3 projects that we're working on currently as we speak, that are even kind of preparing discovery or audience aggregation over the next kind of 3 to 5 years.
Sure. Zubin, is there any aspect of technology you're using differently or you would like to highlight which is aiding you in monetization going forward?
Yeah, there are some case studies that we've done. One is, of course, on cost cutting, where we've seen that there are some technologies where we look at smart transcoding, where, heavy FPS kind of files need higher transcoding rates, but the ones with still images, like we are all still right now, there's not much movement and stuff. Those kind of images are automatically transcoded at lower rates, but the quality remains the same. And therefore, if your transcoding comes down, your cost of delivery comes down, and everything else is a complete chain reaction towards reducing costs. So that's one way of making sure your costs are maintained. A very interesting other technology that we also use is we look at user experiences and we monitor user experiences in a completely anonymous fashion. But we look at their path in our UX and UI in a normal thing. So we actually capture that and observe what they do exactly on the platform. And recently we also saw that, we had multiple plans coming up on our subscription pages. So we had category plans, we had yearly plans, we had monthly plans. So there were lots of choice out there, and lots of customers were coming to the plans page, looking at it, going up and down, and then bouncing off. So based on that information, we actually changed our entire pricing and plans and everything. And now we are seeing much better rates. So that technology actually helped us observe as it's almost like a fly on the wall situation where you're observing very quietly as to what your customer is doing in in an experience of your service without and based on the interaction with your service, you are improvising it and trying to make it even better day in and day out. So that's one example on tech. Yeah, I think the other point that even Ali was touching upon is that TV is all about prime time, and OTT is all about my time is prime time. So I guess that's the best way to put it. And customers are extremely content loyal. And I can say it safely that no OTT today can claim that my customers are loyal to me, because they don't end up being loyal to a platform.
Correct.
They're more loyal to content.
Correct.
And you have a family man jumping. People will jump onto Amazon Prime. You have a Money Heist. They'll jump onto Netflix.
Correct.
And that's how they keep bouncing around OTTs just to get the best of content. Now, the holy grail, which still needs to be found out as we go along in our Escort journey, is what is that magic bullet that will help customers to hold on to their platform loyalty. And that will probably be the emergence of a winner in the OTT space as I see it.
And that will be the blue ocean. Navneeth, is there any aspect of technology you're using and would like to highlight for the viewers?
Nothing significant to add beyond what others have said. Same use cases. But I think it helps us both in terms of creation of content and discovery of content and presentation of content. I think one of the core changes in our approach we've realized and made is I tend to now view content and tech as two sides of the same coin. And if this is in harmony, commerce will follow. So, of course, we use specific pieces, but nothing more to add than what has been said already.
Sure, Navesh. Shweta, closing remarks from you. Any advice you have for content creators operating in this space and how they can leverage on technology?
That's a very long conversation. So I'm going to reach out to all three of them. So, no, thank you.
So you will DM each one of us. You will DM each one of us.
Yes, of course.
But on another note,
amazing.
If you would want to sum
up. Really, I think a lot of great insights have been shared, and so much of wealth, I would say, of ideas that have been shared. What I'm going to do, I've made a lot of notes. I'm going to write a blog on it. So hopefully, we'll be able to sum it up and save a lot of time for a lot of people, which is becoming a great challenge these days, the span of attention. So thank you all. I just want to say thanks for being so candid and sharing all those insights. It was a great conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Shweta, you're stealing my line now. But any case, thank you very much, all of you. Navneeth, Zubin, Ali, Shweta. This was really insightful. Thank you for this insightful discussion. And Shweta, we'll wait for your blog when it comes. Please DM it to all of us. Okay.
I'm going to tag all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Lane. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.